Right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Startup Talent Q&A. I believe it's our 174th session. We've been doing these now for just over 4.5 years, where we've had about 290,000 people that have tuned in, and we've answered about 3,000 questions from founders like yourselves. But none of that would have been possible without people like Laura and Jeff. So if Laura and Jeff would like to drop your LinkedIn URLs in the chat, in case anybody wants to follow you, please feel free to do so. On the other hand, for those of you that haven't been here before, we're here to help founders with whatever questions you may have in terms of that talent journey of yours, whether you want to find a co-founder or perhaps advisors or um, part-timers or contractors or fractionals, or maybe that first employee, whatever it may be, this is the place to join and ask questions and get on-demand tailored advice that works for you. We do this based on our experience, where we've been and where we've come from, and hopefully it would be useful to you. Now, the idea is quite simple. There are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. If you've got any questions on how to find, hire, keep, and empower the right people, please feel free to ask them. The easiest way to do that, it's by dropping your question in the chat. We then give you the mic and you fire away with your question. You start by introducing yourself, then ask a question, and Laura and Jeff will answer it. Now, for those of you that are on the live streams, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there live. So if you do have any questions for us, you'll need to do it here on Microsoft Teams. And the quickest way you can get here is by going to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. You scroll down a little bit, you'll find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 174. You click join. It's a quick registration on Luma, and then that, well, when you get there, you'll be able to find today's details, basically, which is Startup Talent Q&A. You've got a link for the Microsoft Teams call. Now, being audio only, it means you can tune in and join us from anywhere via any platform or device. Let's say you're walking your dog in Surrey, or working from a shared office in Shoreditch, or perhaps cooking lunch in Liverpool, or maybe changing baby nappies in Glasgow. It doesn't really matter where you are. It's easy to join us. Now, just a reminder that if your questions are not on talent today, please save them for the other conversations we run. Mondays, obviously, as you can see today, it's talent. Then Tuesdays, it's product and tech. Wednesdays, it's growth. Thursdays, it's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. They're all available on our website, startuptoscaleup.club. And the way today's going to work is quite straightforward, I like to think. We'll have some quick introductions, then we'll open it for a do and a don't from both Laura and Jeff in terms of early stage hiring. And then we'll go on to your questions. So it's as simple as that. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Anton Call. I'm an Albanian in London working with startups normally right after they get investment. I embed within their teams and help them hire and keep the right people. I also do some growth advisory work with a few other startups and accelerators, and help some angels and family offices with their due diligence and their assessments. And now we'll go on to the lady of the house, Laura, please, and then Jeff.
Hey, I'm Laura Lane. I have been in the people space for about 20 years now, which always scares me. I started off running recruitment companies, then more broadly talent. So I cover the entire ecosystem, whether it's cultural diagnostic, org design as an example, or whether it's simply hiring people. And I've worked now for startups. It's where I'm the most comfortable. I've worked for 2 fintechs, anything from seed through to Series E. I've worked for fast-paced retail or e-commerce, and I'm now in a media startup.
Cool. And I'm Jeff Wellstead. I similarly, like Anton, am an import from the US, been over here in the UK now for 21 years. And I basically kind of work with fast growth tech and biotech companies and helping them build people strategy and whole HR functions. Big chunk of that tends to kind of be around HR technology or work tech as well. And that really got me, I got really embedded in that about 10 years ago. And most lately have been really excited about the potential of AI and the impact it can have in the workspace. And so I've been basically consulting to companies around that and connecting them to people who can do things like build agents and agentic systems and things of that nature. But that has also forced, for me, a very, very deep dive into understanding all of the different aspects in terms of how work should work. Because you have to know that first, obviously, before you start applying things like AI. But that's basically me in a nutshell. So 20 years at least of doing hypergrowth tech and biotech HR buildouts.
Amazing. Thank you very much to you both, and I really appreciate that. Well, we've only got 51 minutes to go now, so perhaps we get on to some do's and don'ts when it comes to early stage hiring. I'm sure both of you have seen some great stuff out there, but also horrible stuff, perhaps. So, what is it, one do and one don't each, please? And let's not use the same logic for both, that it's very important to you when it comes to early stages of talent. Jeff, do you want to go first on this, and then Laura, please?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I know that this forum tends to kind of focus a lot on hiring. When should you hire? Who should you hire? To what position? For what benefit? That kind of a thing. So I'll just kind of like focus on that very quickly. The one thing that I would always point out, and I know it's been written in a lot of articles, and it seems really, really logical, but it's the way that you seek the best possible talent for your mission. When you hire when you're small, it's a very, very different type of hire than it is for when you are much more secure and there are many more people kind of covering off multiple different areas. So I would say make sure that you hire, yes, to a degree in terms of whether or not somebody's had generally the right experience, but much more importantly, how, what is their learning agility? How quickly do they pick up on things? How curious and intelligent are they? And how inquisitive are they? And also make sure too that they've got sort of a proven sense of ownership in terms of having kind of worked in environments where they were highly accountable. That's super, super important, possibly more important than exactly what kind of logos you see on the CV. In terms of don'ts, I would say in terms of don'ts, okay, there's another focus, which is a tendency to kind of overhire. And I see this a lot. I get companies that say, "Hey, can you help us grow 300%, 500% year over year?" and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, what kind of math or logic, right, was used in that calculation? So I would say you need to be hyper disciplined around this. You need to listen also to your CFO, and hopefully your CFO is a very powerful strategic partner, and frankly, debater. When you, as a founder, are kind of considering how quickly you're going to grow. Growth can be as deadly as no growth. So you got to be careful. Things spin out of control very, very quickly. So really critical that you plan carefully and hire in the right people who are going to truly anchor each function that you're hiring for, and let those people then, kind of help build the pyramid, if you will, or whatever structure you like, to ultimately kind of get you to the right place from a hiring perspective. Do not overhire, please. Think smart, think critical intelligence, think special operations soldiers in terms of the people you're trying to bring on board. And that's my 2 pence.
That's quite hard to follow because I wouldn't be too dissimilar in terms of your do's or your don'ts, Jeff. But I think the only thing I would add to the do's is to just be really particular about who you're hiring and what that tenure looks like for them. I think too often people might think I need an engineer, but you're not necessarily thinking long term what that engineer might morph into. So I think it's really important, first of all, to say, is it a permanent hire, or are they a permanent hire? Are they a contractor potentially? Do I go to a third party for a little while until I figure all of this out? Because it's very easy to hire for an immediate need. I think regardless of scale, you should always hire for aptitude and ability before you hire for experience, because I think as much as that's important in some roles, typically it's the things that you can teach with relative ease. And I think the only other thing that I would particularly add on to the do's, and this goes against a lot of the rhetoric that you'll hear or things that you'll read, which is make sure that you hire someone not necessarily based on your ability to have a drink with them. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Whether you drink or not is irrelevant. But when you are small and you're a startup, you'll probably spend more time with your colleagues or your direct reports than you will with your loved ones. So I think making sure that you have a cultural fit or cultural add and you get on well enough to make work fun is really important, because no one wants to do 12-hour days with somebody that they despise. I think it's very rarely said in the talent world, but personally I think it's really important. And then in terms of don'ts, again, I'm afraid I'm going to say the same thing. It's not overhiring, but it's also not cutting corners. There are about 12 different ways that you can interview people, and that could be anything from work assessments to technical tests. That's historic research that will be added to now when you think about AI and VR and all of the different ways to assess someone. Use the tools at hand. When you are tiny, bringing somebody in that could erode trust or could impact productivity is the worst thing that you can do, and it's felt. So if that does happen, deal with it very quickly. But to mitigate that, don't be afraid of having a slightly extended process. Doesn't mean long and drawn out. You can do that in a really quick time scale, but really think about what you're trying to assess and then how you're going to assess them and what those metrics are before you offer.
Oh, that's some amazing stuff. Thank you very much to both of you. Really appreciate that. Okay, I think it's time we get on to some questions. Quick reminder, if you are on the live streams, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we're unable to monitor your questions there live. So you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only, which means you can tune in from anywhere via any platform or device. And once you're here, if you want some clarity or some ideas on your talent journey, whether that's finding the right people, or maybe you want to understand where to look, or perhaps who should be the first hire, or what kind of skills they need to have, how do you interview them, what do you need to do in order to make sure that you do the right background checks or that you have the right culture in place, and all that jazz. There literally are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. All you have to do once you make it onto our Microsoft Teams call, and by the way, quickest way to do that is to go onto our website, startup2scaleup.club. Scroll down a little bit, you'll see today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 174. Click join. It's a quick registration on Luma. There you'll find the link that you can join us here. And then once you're here, simply drop the question in the chat. We'll give you a mic, introduce yourself, and fire away with whatever question you may have. Now, if your questions are on other matters, please save them for the other conversations we run. We do 6 in total. So today's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month is UK Startup Law, and third Friday of each month it's UK Startup Finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and they're all available on our site, startup2scaleup.club. I'm now going to read out loud for the live streams a question I'll put in the chat, and both Laura and Jeff can, I guess, refer to it when you give us your answer. This is one of 2 co-founders of a clean tech startup in Brighton. She says they're preparing for Series A. She goes on to say, we create eco-friendly home insulation materials. We're struggling with occasional conflicts between ourselves and R&D teams of our product expectations and feasibility. Given our limited budget, how can we address these conflicts constructively to ensure both teams understand each other's challenges? Additionally, what ongoing practices can we introduce to improve communication, fostering a culture where departments collaborate smoothly, even under tight deadlines. I managed to find her on LinkedIn, and the company that I'm assuming she's at now, where she's a co-founder, lists 11 people, but I don't know whether they have more people or not.
Do you want me to take
So
that one? Oh,
yes,
sorry.
of course you can go first. Go ahead, Laura.
So I think I like with all of these things, I have a million questions back, so I'm not going to be the most helpful. So if she wants to reach out to me separately, by all means, she can do. If there are only 11 people, my first question would be, how are you communicating currently? Where are you based? And what does that look like? And it doesn't matter if you're in person or if you're doing it on Zoom. But truthfully, I would worry if communication with 11 people isn't working fully. So the first thing I would do is ask people why and what they're struggling with and what they don't understand. I think I would then set up a session for people to have an open conversation. And I think I would do as much as I could to encourage shared learning and to be very clear about priorities and how each person ladders up to those priorities, which if you were bigger, I would probably do with performance management. But I don't know with 11 people that you need to be particularly stringent with those things. It's much more about the conversations that you're having. I think another thing, especially if you are small, you have an opportunity to do now, which most companies miss, is being really clear and intentional on who you are and how you communicate and what you tolerate and what you don't, because that sets your stall out for the very beginning. There are different frameworks that you can use to do that, but really simply what you want to know is what's your mission and how are you trying to achieve it, and therefore what behaviors are going to link up to that, what systems and processes, what communication style. Because once you have all of that, you have a really clearly defined way of working that becomes really obvious when you hire, but also when you operate. And then you need to hold people to account when they're doing that. So if it is that you're sharing daily and somebody isn't, then you can quite quickly say, can I just check in? Why haven't you done that? I need to know X, Y, and Z. But honestly, at this stage, I'd have a million more questions than I have answers.
Cool. And just to kind of jump on the back of that extraordinarily well-structured response, I will kind of shift gears ever so slightly and kind of get into a bit of personal history with some of the stuff, because more often than not, interestingly, the struggle has always ever been internally for fast growth companies between R&D or engineering, depending on what it is you're making. It's usually software engineering in my case, and the sales team. Well, both parties want desperately to do an amazing job. They really kind of want to stand out, not just to the founders, but also to kind of like take deep pride in what it is they built. The problem is they have slightly opposing, challenges in their jobs. The sales team is being regularly pushed to get to market fast, to wake people up to this extraordinary new thing, and to get people super pumped up and to stand out above the crowd, which, a lot of people in sales will interpret as being, very kind of charismatic, very, whoever's the loudest, whoever the squeaky wheel is, whoever's the most persistent is typically the person who gets addressed from a buyer perspective. And though that may be true, we have to be careful, obviously, that what we're not doing is over-promising and under-delivering on a regular basis. So the just say anything strategy for sales is deadly. And it's a good way to go out of business within the course of 1 year, right? You start to really piss off or anger 3, 4, 5 customers. Word will get around very quickly that you should be avoided at all costs and just blacklisted. Just ignore them. They're trouble. R&D, on the other hand, obviously desperately wants to create an amazing product. And their problem is perfect is dangerous, because perfect takes a heck of a lot longer to get to market. And so, internally, there needs to be a discussion and an agreement as to how quickly can we, kind of build the thing we want to build. And then I think the fix here is, and a lot of companies miss this, is that we have to kind of create a shared understanding of the importance of delivering something that is very close to what it is you promised, and to make sure that both sales and R&D are working hand in hand and staying on top of each other and being accountable to one another, so that they're not putting the other under incredibly undue stress. So one shared truth, I think, is really critical here. And I think we, on a regular basis, the sales and R&D teams need to kind of meet up in kind of like joint forums, kind of like short recurring, I guess I've heard it called product huddles, where sales kind of brings real customer feedback to the design teams or to the engineering team or R&D, and explains what the constraints and the trade-offs are from their perspective. And then the focus is really then on the customer and on the mission, who become like really kind of the referee in terms of what good looks like versus what bad looks like, and then just regularly get together and make sure that, again, the teams are aligned, that the leadership of both organizations are driving the right behaviors, and if there are conflicts, that they are worked out constructively and worked out in a way that doesn't bruise egos. But that would be sort of my 2 cents in that whole thing. It's very natural, but it requires an intervention.
Thank you very much to you both. Now, I just made a bit of a blunder, because I was hoping I'd ask the second question I've put in first, so to lead to the first one. But anyway, we can probably see and take this one as well. So this is another clean tech. So he says, I'm the co-founder of a pre-seed clean tech startup in Manchester, where we design solar-powered solutions for homes. How can we ensure that new hires quickly understand both the technical and cultural aspects of the company? What are the essential steps in creating an effective onboarding process for both remote and in the office employees? Maybe we can look at it, in terms of culture, embedding culture through onboarding. This came through Instagram, and I couldn't really find their company on LinkedIn. So if you are listening anywhere, whether it's the live streams or here, simply try and send me a message, because I'm sure we have more questions to try and clarify this. But Jeff, do you want to start on this one now, and then we'll go on to Laura?
I will indeed. Yeah, absolutely. I've had to set up these very types of onboarding processes over and over again, because oftentimes the companies I work for, what they did was not really kind of self-explanatory once you actually got on the inside. So I worked with a company called Oxford Nanoimaging at one point, that basically manufactured electron microscopes that basically could see down to like between 2 and 10 nanometers, using digital camera processing and things of that nature. Truly wild. And they manufactured it on site. They designed it on site. They tested it with a wet lab on site. So it was a really interesting challenge to kind of like try to figure out, like, how do we bring somebody out from the outside and really get them inducted, if you will, inculcated, and get them embedded into teams in a way that didn't make them feel like an outsider, and actually very quickly got them integrated, because the speed to full productivity was really kind of the aim, but also psychologically to get people to feel like, you made the right decision and this is an exciting place to be. So I think, for remote and in office, hires, I think it's really critical that the HR team, working with hiring managers and people managers, create a sort of a unified onboarding playbook, we used to call it. And I think you start with a buddy system. Number one, and these buddies have to be trained in terms of being able to ask any questions about anything at any time, and to be there for folks as they're going through this very kind of turbulent process for them mentally. But importantly, can also kind of answer questions and introduce them to people where they have questions. Make sure that you have a founder-led mission session, right? It's really critical to, again, reiterate from the top, why is it we're doing what we are doing? Why is this important? Why you? Why now? Where are we going? That's important to connect with. And then I think the other element is sort of like a technical walkthrough, as I visualize what it was like working in that Oxford Nanoimaging company. Where do you start? And how do you kind of then proceed with a logical narrative that helps people kind of build a sense of what this company is, why does it matter, who are they up against, what are we trying to prove to the world, that kind of a thing. But then showing them, where these people live to go do that stuff. And then, of course, the classic 30, 60, 90-day plan, again, should be robust, should involve a lot of study. Please make sure you give them time to do this and don't choke them out in terms of, hey, put that stuff aside. We don't really care about that. Let's just get in here and start working. Make sure that they actually understand the stuff and it's making a difference. But I'm going to be quiet now and let Lauren carry on, or I can talk forever about this.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm going to disagree with you on quite a few of those points.
Okay, go for it.
I think they're helpful to an extent, but I think first and foremost, answering this question without knowing more about what's important to you and what is and isn't working, it's really difficult because you can be given a really simple suggestion and it doesn't work for you. And I think that's where things go wrong. But on a really basic level, be sure you know who you are in the first place. So again, how do you reward people? What do you do when things go wrong? What does good look like? Because if you don't have any of that, doesn't matter what you put in place for onboarding, it won't work. If you do have all of that, and let's assume that you do, before you do onboarding, you want to do some pre-boarding. So the best way to get people to really engage with you is to start to think about them as if they're your customer. So reach out to them. We're looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time, or we're looking forward to seeing you in 2 months' time. Here are some things that you might want to know before. Potentially they might want to come in and have a coffee or a cup of tea. That's not suggesting you create an environment where you're making people work before they've even turned up, but get them to feel a little bit more part of it beforehand. And again, that depends on how you operate and whether you're remote or not, or both. And then you have to think about, if you're remote or not or both, that has to carry to both populations. Otherwise you're going to leave one feeling left out or more special than the other. And then I think depending on your size, depends on whether or not you do an induction. Buddies are great, but I do agree with Jeff on this one. They need to be really clear on what their roles are when they're a buddy. I think if you have capacity, more time to onboard is better. It's the hardest thing in startups because we always need people to run. But actually, if you can give them a bit of a playbook. So what we do here is we send a culture guide before people join as an example to walk them through what to expect. The first day is usually quite dull. It's not a fun thing, but it's the whole get to know people. Where's the toilet? If you're remote, what does remote look like working here? And then you have to build everything out and be really intentional. And that intention is, do they spend time with each department? Makes sense, especially if you're small, so they understand the interdependencies. They should absolutely have a moment. I'm with Jeff on this one, with a founder in terms of what the overall mission is, but I would say that that's as a follow-up, because they should know that before they join. We should have really stress tested whether or not they're fully behind that mission. So if they come in and they're not sure on it, something's gone wrong in the recruitment process. But to give you a stock answer for this is really difficult. And I think onboarding has become something people feel like they should do. It's not something that people really think about. So if you have customers, which sounds like you do, start treating your employees just like their customers and build out that full onboarding experience. And then I would check up on them and make sure that you give them an opportunity to tell you how they're feeling, what worked and what didn't work, because that goes into your new playbook as you move forward. Some quite interesting companies, both in the US and the UK, will also pay people after their probation if they're not happy and they want to leave. Because what you don't want is people turning up and feeling that they've done the wrong thing. So I think you need to really think about what it is you're trying to achieve and then build something that's specific and bespoke, because if it's off the shelf, it won't work.
Well, thank you very much to you both. And yes, I can see from both of you that it's not easy to give the right answers when we don't have enough information, and definitely when we don't have you here to ask follow-up. So please do bear that in mind. Either provides enough meat to the bone when you send a question, or at least join us here so that we can ask follow-ups. But um, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to work with the tools we've got, and these are the tools that you've given us, and we'll try and answer based on what you've sent. But by being here, one, you get better conversations, and two, you're more likely to get a better answer and a more extensive answer. Nevertheless, we'll move on to another question, but just a reminder again, If you do want to ask our panel anything, just remember there are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy. Now, I understand some people may feel reluctant, or you think somebody might steal your business idea. On the reluctant part, again, we've all been there, we've all made those mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with that. On the idea part, one thing that I've learned is that the people that can, I steal, they haven't got the time. And the people that have got the time, they haven't got the ability to steal your idea. It's all about execution, and that's what we're hopefully going to help you here. Now, let's move on to the third question for today. Seed stage green construction startup in Peterborough. They develop modular eco housing units. He says we just got our first proper project, and I'm finding it challenging to manage the mix of contractors, suppliers, and full-time staff needed for this, and hopefully others to come. Given our limited resources, what affordable practices can help us set clear terms for each relationship type, particularly for contractors and suppliers? Furthermore, how can we ensure that our agreements support both flexibility and accountability, balancing project timelines with the sustainability standards critical to our brand? Maybe we can start with Laura on this, and then we'll go on to Jeff. What would you do here, Laura?
I think contractors is really different to permanent members of staff. So I don't know what agreements you would have in place with those, but it's almost simpler to an extent, because if they're not performing, then you need to find a contractor that you believe would. What I wasn't clear of was whether it's numerous individual people that are contracting through you, or whether you're contracting through a third party and then managing those contractors. I think in fairness, either apply. If it's lots of individuals, that's potentially harder on you. But that for me is,
That's how it sounded to me.
yeah,
Based on the question, although we never know since they're not here. But to me,
yeah.
it sounds like it's different contract.
So if it's different contractors, I think there are two things moving forward. If you were going to do this again, you might find it easier to find a company that pulls them all together for you, and then you have one point of contact. That can sometimes be easier, but it depends on cash flow and it depends on how good your network is already. I think with the individual contractors, it's having a very clear contract in place without teaching you to suck eggs, which very clearly states what you expect them to do. But what you can't always do with contracts is say exactly how you want them to do it. You can maybe give them timelines for when you want things done by, but they shouldn't be under what's called your direct supervision or your direct control. So it becomes more about outcome based. And I think where you're struggling with outcomes, that's where you have a difficult conversation. And there's not much, unless I'm missing something, that you can wrap up around there. You can absolutely make people feel like they're part of a mission, and you can make them feel like they have an opportunity to make a difference. But it's a very different relationship, because a contractor is a business and therefore it's B2B for all intensive purposes. I think when it's your own permanent people, I think that's when you really need to bring them through a little bit more. So I think that's much more about saying this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is the impact if we do achieve it, and this is what the outcome could be for you. And it's galvanizing people behind a mission, and that really depends on your people and your setup as to how you galvanize them. For some, it's as simple as them believing in your mission. For other, it might be that you have milestones in and celebrations. If they're not performing well, and even if they are, actually, I would always suggest retrospectives. They're not something that just tech can use, it can be used anywhere. So I would start to put those in. How have the last 2 weeks gone? How could we improve? Treat it like it's iterative and that you can move along. And I think where you have specific, whether it's regulations or just ways that you want to hold yourself to account for working because of the industry that you're in, all of that has to be baked into your plans. Your timelines have to allow for those things. And potentially how you assess success is not just that somebody has achieved something, but it's the standard to which they've achieved it. And that can cross over whether they're permanent or contract, because for contract you can offer things in, like, if you deliver to what we consider 100%, as in that could be how you show up, the quality of your work, we will overpay you. If you deliver on the basis, we'll pay you a flat rate. If you deliver under, we'll deliver you under that. And you can work out fees across the board. And similarly with your perms, there might be something that you do to reward people for delivering above and beyond, or for achieving whatever it is that you need to achieve, that isn't just black and white and on paper, but that elevates you as a startup.
Thanks, Laura. Jeff?
Yeah, that was extraordinarily comprehensive. Thank you for that, Laura. Yeah, these things are always complicated. It's really interesting. I got thrust into this world most recently with a clean tech battery storage company, where I was like realizing just how complex it will be to kind of build out the very first beyond prototype, but actually operational platform for this. And it really was this incredible hodgepodge, which I think, by the way, is going to be the new norm going forward. Hodgepodge of contractors, consultants, of part-time, full-time, kind of employees, and to kind of like figure out from a workforce planning perspective who was going to be what, who could occupy what positions, and what then did we expect of them, and how was it we were going to measure them relative to the performance, kind of accountabilities that we set up and agreed to. Really difficult. I think the other interesting experience was my eldest son is training to be an electrician, and basically got himself into the world of building data centers. And he tried to explain to me in the first week, what the employment situation was like. And I was like, just completely befuddled. They basically have like all the electricians on this particular site working as sole traders, and having to then connect with the accountancy that the head company who is managing this project works with. And the perk there is that they will take care of all of your taxation and everything else and give you a preferential tax rate. They'll do your quarterly filings for you, on and on. But you get sick, you get fed up, whatever the case, you get screamed at, whatever the case, you have no recourse, right? Aside from obviously kind of more grievous acts of difficulty. So it's really important that you basically have in your mind a sense that, look, when people come in here to work, they are representing us. And I want to make sure too that we are representing our best to the people that we're working with. So that means let's have a really easy, clear onboarding process. Let's make sure that we've got templates for every type of work. And let's make sure that those things are accurate, and that what is spelled out there in terms of expectations and productivity targets and pay systems accordingly are all in place, so that there are no questions. And by the way, this is not something you do overnight and it's one and done. It is a continuous evolving process that needs complete iteration. So it's really critical to have sort of retrospective discussions as to how good is this going, or how badly is this going, and what do we need to fix, and how quickly can we fix it. But it's really important that everybody on site, everybody working remotely, in whatever capacity you have them in, feels like this is a terrific employer. I want to do my best for them. They've done their best for me, and I think they deserve that. And also, when you hit snags, which you inevitably will do, not everybody responds well to these types of environments, and people, can basically go off the ranch. That sort of thing. You need to deal with that quite quickly, and send the message that kind of behavior won't be tolerated, unfortunately, and just reiterate what is important to the company and to the people supporting it. So it's a tricky one. This is hard, and we're going to have to get good at it. There are also other apps out there. Like one comes to mind, ClickUp. Is particularly good at managing, kind of multifaceted challenges. There's a young company I'm working with that has an HR system, that has a skills-based, kind of development system, is also for internal resourcing, and deals with all different types of employment types. And I think that's, again, likely going to become much more normal. And that's a company called WorkUp. I think it's workup.cloud. But I think, this is going to be the world that we're going to have to be particularly skilled at managing in the era here of AI going forward. But that'd be my 2 pence worth.
Thank you very much to both of you. And now the next question, you can go, Jeff, and then Laura, but I'll quickly reset the conversation for those of you that have just joined us. This is Startup Talent Q&A 174. We're doing this to help you on your talent journey as you look for co-founders, advisors, fractionals, contractors, part-timers, perhaps those first early employees and all that jazz, and anything to do with that, whether you want to decide where to look for certain people, how to do it, how much to pay them, what kind of skills they need to have, how do you interview certain people, what do you do when they join? How do you keep them? How do you empower them? And all that jazz. There literally are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. And believe you me, we've been there and had some pretty, well, at least speaking for myself, some pretty interesting failures or learnings, as I call them. You see, unfortunately, over 90% of startups fail. And the top three reasons for that are: one, market fit; two, running out of money; and three, not having the right people. But guess what? If you lack the right people, you're less likely to get any of the other stuff that you need in order to succeed with your startup. Now, if you're on the live streams, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we're unable to monitor your questions there live. So if you want to join us, you'll need to, and sort of ask questions to our panel, you'll need to be here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only. It is recorded, but being audio only means that you can tune in from anywhere via any platform or device. Quickest way to get here is to go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. You scroll down a little bit, you'll find today's session, Startup Talent Q&A 174. Click join, quick registration on Luma, and that, well, there you'll find a link for the Microsoft Teams call, and then you can tune here. Once you're here, simply drop your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic, introduce yourself, and fire away with your question. Now, if your questions today are not on talent, please save them for the other conversations we run. So Mondays, as you can see, today is talent. Tuesday's product and tech. Wednesday's growth. Thursday's fundraising. Second Friday of each month is UK startup law. And third Friday of each month is UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And remember, if you're here with us on Microsoft Teams, it's interactive, better conversations, and definitely better answers that you can make use of. Right, now I'll read out loud the question for the live streams, and both Jeff and then Laura can refer to it in the chat if you like. This is one of four co-founders of a pre-seed agri-tech startup in Oxford, where they're developing sensor-based solutions for sustainable farming. He says, we're struggling to write job ads that attract the right candidates for our core roles in both engineering and agriculture. With a limited budget, what are the most important elements to include in job specifications that clearly communicate the required technical expertise, whilst also reflecting our mission of promoting environmental sustainability? Additionally, how can we make our ads compelling to candidates passionate about both tech and agriculture, ensuring we reach the right talent pool? Mr. Walston.
Yeah, no, indeed. And it's a challenge I've come up against quite a bit, quite a number of times, because the technologies that I've worked with, I guess on the surface of it, weren't horribly obvious, nor sometimes even quickly explainable to people, especially if they were any distance away from what a company did. So I think it's really important to kind of think about you and your company and what it is you're on the planet to do and why it's important. How many people are you going to impact? What problems are you trying to solve? And very quickly, you get away from the fact that you're just an agri-tech company that needs some engineers, and you got sort of a couple of good ideas about how to, kind of drive more sustainable output from an agricultural perspective. Okay, that's pretty much been what farmers have done pretty much ever since farming was farming, right? So you want to stand out. You want to wake people up to a new reality that you're trying to kind of address. And that reality might be something like, and this is just a scene setting thing, that, X billions of people basically are facing food instability and agricultural collapse, and that there will be and are already famines occurring in all sorts of different locations around the world that are quickly kind of running out of control. And we want to figure out a way to impact that. We want to save 1 billion lives. How do we do that? Because we're going to put together some brilliant engineering and then explain the technical process. And in so doing, as people are reading it, people love a good story, a short story, but a good story. And a video is even better, right? A video with basically some explainer elements and some pictures and all sorts of things, really critical to get that message across that you are here for more than just being an ag tech company. You are here to change the world. And importantly, to prepare the world for what's coming. And you can bring up things like climate change and the fact that, X amount of arable land will soon be underwater. Who knows what the issues are, but that's what you're basically trying to solve for. People get excited about that. That is a mission worth fighting for, even potentially if it's going to be less money. But immediately off the back of that, because that does not carry by any stretch the full decision-making weight when people have to basically lift their lives that are known to them, lift and shift families, move countries, all this other kind of stuff, possibly take less in salary, as oftentimes I see companies do. You need to kind of explain to them, why is this value proposition really critical to you? And you don't start with money because you don't probably have it. What you want to start with is what is this going to do to change your life? Why is it this is the job you've been waiting for forever? What kind of work are you going to do? Is it leading bleeding edge? Are you going to be able to brag about this to your mates? Are you going to be working alongside egoless, powerful peers that you can learn from? Are you going to work for managers who are far more like coaches and colleagues with direction and focus and the ability to support you, as opposed to micromanagers? Are you going to work for inspirational leaders, right? And importantly, above all else, are you going to work for something that's bigger than you and matters? And so that's basically the kind of messaging you want to put together. And you want to get that out on social media, right? Reasonably inexpensively. LinkedIn has, I forgot the name of the thing, but there's a package, a recruitment package you can buy that talks about life on the inside of your organization. That's the other thing too. Get people to talk about it. So that would be my 2 cents.
So I'm
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, Laura.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm kind of with you. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm disagreeing with a few things, but the LinkedIn package that you spoke about, unless you're a startup with a lot of money, don't do it, because having worked for large corporates that aren't startups, you have to have that as a full-time job to make a LinkedIn life page work. And they're called LinkedIn life pages. They're very expensive, and engineers don't tend to spend their time on LinkedIn. So you need to think about where you're going to go, specifically if it's engineers or if it's whatever else it might be. But you need to think about what's the candidate persona. So specifically, what's the age demographic? It's not technically about age, but you will know roughly based on how much experience someone might have, where you think that they sit. So you first of all need to be really clear on the candidate persona, because then you can decide where those people are hanging about so that you can find them. And Jeff is absolutely right. You want to be on socials. If you've got videos, great. Actually, if you can think about it like a sales funnel and you can make it habitual and they've seen you more than once and they start to recognize your brand, great. And that's where I think the LinkedIn live pages come in, but they cost an awful lot of money. And whatever LinkedIn tell you, it's not worth it unless you're huge and you've got a team that are dedicated to building it. But if you can be social adjacent and you can turn up where your candidates are, that's really different. So if you know that the populace that you're looking for are on TikTok, start being loud on TikTok. That doesn't cost you very much money and you'll start showing up on their feeds. Everything that Jeff said about who you are and making that really clear, I absolutely am 100% behind. But I think the other things are just on a really basic level. If you're going to write it down, then shouldn't be more than about 60 seconds. It's an ad, remember, and people tend to apply for jobs on a Monday, not on a Friday. So you need to be really clever about when you post jobs. The world's on fire and a lot of people are out of work. So that's changed slightly. But the psyche, as you finish on a Friday, you're fed up, you see a job, you think you'll apply, but you probably don't, because the last thing you want to think about is work. But on Monday, on those commutes that most of us are having to do now, you're likely to apply. When you think about the application, make it easy. If someone's likely applying on their way to work and they hit send and they have to fill out loads of information on your application tracking system, you'll lose them. So take every blocker away to access. The easier you can do it, the better. Make your language gender neutral, whether that's on a video, on socials, or on a job description. Don't have tons of things that you want from them. And when I say that, make it really clear. So you don't really want more than 8 bullet points around what's important. Make it obvious what they'll be doing day to day. And then I think where you can, in and around the gender neutrality, and you're putting in what's attractive to them, talk them through about what the benefits of working for you are. Nobody, as much as we're being asked to come back to the office, if you really ask your teams, want to. So if you're giving them an opportunity to be hybrid, make sure that that's really clear, because that's the things that will stand out for you. If you're paying less and you want them in the office, you're going to struggle, even with the best mission in the world, because people are struggling with inflation. So you might need to think about, actually, where's your flex and what are you going to enable these people to do if they're working for you. So get all of that really clear, and then be concise, and then look at where you advertise, and don't spend a ton of money doing it unless you're really sure that you know that that's the platform that's going to bring people in.
Thank you very much to you both. Can I ask you, Laura, sorry, I'm losing it, Laura, can I ask you, you mentioned the LinkedIn Live page being quite expensive. What sort of costs are we talking about? Do either of you know that?
It really depends on the size of your company, but to do it properly, thousands, like thousands and thousands. And it depends what you buy as a package, because you can buy a LinkedIn page. It's really hard because you can't see me and I talk with my hands, but you could buy a LinkedIn page where people land at it, or a LinkedIn Live page, and then you buy a number of pages that go off of that link to specific departments that you can then talk about. But you also have to think about what demographic is on LinkedIn and is looking at you, and you need to make those really relevant. So if what you've posted is 6 months old, no one's going to be particularly interested. The likelihood is you will get just as much response if you go on TikTok or Instagram. LinkedIn is great as a posting tool. And right now, with the way that the world is, especially if you're hiring in the UK, I wouldn't waste your money on it. Just get one LinkedIn recruiter license, and then you can post, and you get 2 job slots for that anyway. So you're advertising. And then your own advertising around your socials would hopefully bring people through to somewhere like LinkedIn. And when they see your advertising, there should be a moment in their mind where they go, oh my goodness, I've seen this company. I'm sure they popped up on my socials. They look really interesting. But as much as Jeff is right, and I don't disagree with you on most points, Jeff, and I think mission is really important. People are struggling, and more people are going on the breadline. So if you haven't got loads of cash, don't assume that because people love your mission, they can work for you. Think about what you can do to make it easier for people to come to you, which could be, for a working parent working from home, I take 20,000 less because I get time with my child and I'm not spending that on commuting. So I think it's thinking smart about the talent that you want and how you get them.
Interesting. Thank you very much to both of you. Really appreciate that. Right, we've only got 5 minutes, so we'll only have one more question. I'll put that in the chat, but I'll read it out loud for the live streams. As the co-founder of a pre-seed agri-tech startup in Leeds, where we provide precision farming solutions for small-scale farms, we're hiring our first full-time operations manager and several part-time workers. What cost-effective payroll management tools can we implement to ensure accurate and timely payments for both full-time employees and part-time staff? Also, how can we manage payroll compliance with tax regulations as we expand internationally? That's a very good question. Laura, do you want to start first on that, and then we go to Jeff?
I'll do my best. Jeff might be better from a tech perspective. I'm not a lover of payroll, so I'm fortunate my teams usually manage that for me. And there are loads of different payroll providers that, if you're looking to expand globally, are great because they'll cover that for you. Although you need to really be clear that they're very they understand local law. And an example of that, I can't remember the name of them, but I introduced a payroll provider to one of the fintechs that I worked at, and they were great if we were in certain countries, but they didn't understand the law in others, and that then became problematic. I think depending on where you're going to end up being, you might look at a company like Deal, whether or not they're good, I can't speak to, but effectively a PEO that takes care of all of your people costs for a period of time until you're ready to take them over yourself. And when I mean people, I mean the real functionary element. So they'll make sure that payroll is covered. They'll make sure that they've got the legalities right in country for you. And also, if you want to start somewhere and you don't have an entity, they're a really good way around not necessarily having that entity available already, because you tend to be able to work through them. And if you're going to countries like the US, as an example, it means you have opportunities for good healthcare providers, which as a small startup would cripple you in terms of costs. So there are lots of different options. I couldn't name some for you right now, I'm afraid, without going back in my black book. So I'll hand over to Jeff, who I'm hoping knows more in that world.
Yeah, that's something I've had to
Thank you.
use
Yeah.
on quite a regular basis when, especially for the tech companies who almost inevitably, within weeks of my joining, suddenly kind of sprung on me that they have this huge global expansion plan. And how is it they're going to do stuff like manage local employment law, local hiring? They don't plan on getting legal entities set up anytime soon. And frankly, even if they did start that process tomorrow, it would potentially take as long as 6 months to get established in some countries. And so that was sort of not an option. But nonetheless, there are solutions, as Laura mentioned, and POE is one of them. Employer of record, EOR, is kind of like how it's more commonly kind of spoken about when you're talking about a global solution. And I have to say that none of these are cheap. Okay. And the reason being is if you're going to pay a company to know how to manage, employees and the hiring process and payroll and benefits and all of the other kind of required statutory components in 140 countries, you're probably going to pay a bit of a premium. And that typically comes in sort of monthly slots and can be as high, I kid you not, depending on the seniority of the employee, as high as £6,000-7,000 a month, believe it or not, in some instances. But if you can negotiate, if you're going to hire in bulk and you're going to hire, say, across Europe, which is, yes, very country to country, but nonetheless, extraordinarily well known, and much less guesswork perhaps than kind of working sometimes in Asia Pacific regions or, just more remote regions. South America is another one. That's what I was thinking of. That was a bit more complex and hence more expensive. The tools for managing in the UK that I think are a bit more kind of low cost options for you would be tools like BrightPay, Pento, and I've heard Rippling has like a starter tier, but having said that, Rippling can get expensive very quickly.
Rippling, I would stay away from, Jeff, having
Yeah.
used them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm glad you said that. I just know that they offer, kind of the ability to kind of work in other countries and things of that nature, but I wasn't sure how mature an offering that was. The ones I've worked with that I thought were particularly good were Remote. It's remote.com, Deal, who you'll hear about quite regularly. Deal basically has developed an HRIS solution as well, and a couple of other solutions in the space in terms of things like performance management and learning and development and all sorts of things. So they're trying to kind of build a whole ecosystem that basically kind of replaces, possibly even betters, your existing small HR effort over the course of time. But again, it's a little bit pricey. Oyster is another company that kind of popped up on the scene about 5-6 years ago. I used them a couple of years ago. To basically hire as many as 11 or maybe possibly 15 engineers across Europe and Eastern Europe, and some over in areas like Turkey and things of that nature. And look, the ease of sign-on was amazing. Sometimes you had to chase on certain things and everything else, but not to have to worry about employment law, not to have to worry about payroll amounts, Reporting sometimes was always ever a challenge because the CFO wanted it a certain way. And so, you worked out some of those bumps in the road. But again, that's a lot easier to work out than trying to kind of understand how employment works and payroll works in as many countries as you can hire into. But those would be my my contributions to that.
Thank you very much to both of you. I'm just going to add two quick things from this. Number one, in my experience at this early stage, whilst a lot of the accounting software out there can be a bit tricky, most of them have payroll packages too. Now, it's not always easy to marry them nicely together, but you may find that you can actually find something that works and does wonders for both. It's also worth speaking to your accountant because often they'll know ways to make that right. And early stages, when you haven't got the resources or the money to properly look at it, I would advise to go for the least complicated things and obviously the cheapest. Once things start getting better, then you can maybe bring in an advisor to help you set it all up and all that jazz. And in terms of if you go down the path of international hires to start with contract. That way, one, you get to try each other and see if it's a good marriage or not. And two, if you start on contract, you can find an agency out there in that country to take care of that for you. Personally, I've gone down this route a few times with some startups that I help, and it's best to kind of take the least complicated way at the beginning. Again, once things get better, then obviously you want to be more in control. But a good, we run a session on finance every month, and if you want to, the next one, it's 19th of December. Feel free to join us, and also we've got a group for the finance Q&A, and you can ask questions in that group. But with that in mind, I think Laura's gone 4 minutes over the line. Jeff, would you like to give us some parting words?
Sure. Yeah, just, kind of based on the questions we had today, when you were thinking about growth and you're thinking about growing, just remember that startups don't scale because they hire fast. Oftentimes that can lead to disaster. They scale basically because they're built on clarity, right? On thinking through, who are we going to need? What kind of attributes and skills and experience are they going to bring to lay the foundations for what we're going to have later? So you're hiring, yes, for experience, but again, focus on, building and whether or not this person is going to be a builder of things or they're just going to be a functionary. And you want builders early on. Just set clear expectations, be really consistent in your communication, right? And create a culture that really connects people across all functions to the common, critical mission and focus of the organization, and make sure people are lined up to that. But that would be sort of my parting thoughts.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Now, before my parting words, a couple of things to mention, I guess. Number one, we run 6 regular sessions helping founders for free to hopefully go from startup to scale up. So as you saw today, Mondays is talent, Tuesdays product and tech, Wednesdays growth, Thursdays fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. Third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. They're all available on our site for you to register, and that is startuptoscaleup.club. So again, if you go to startuptoscaleup.club, you'll be able to register to any future session. We also have some nice groups on WhatsApp that you can connect with other founders, operators, investors, and of course, our amazing panelists. You can send questions ahead of each session. You can discuss topics that we touch post sessions. You obviously here on Microsoft Teams, being audio only, it means you can tune in from anywhere via any platform or device, but you can also listen to the recording. So bear that in mind. Ideally, we'd prefer that next time you move from the live streams and join us here interactively on Microsoft Teams instead. Now, as far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both difficult but also quite exciting. So try to have some fun in the meantime and be kind to yourself as well as everyone else for that matter. Otherwise, huge thanks. Have a great week ahead of you, and hopefully you'll join us tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech Q&A. Thank you, and God bless. Bye-bye for now.